All right, ladies, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I am so excited to have Jennifer, our own original J-Lo, with us tonight. And Jennifer and I go way back. Our families go way back. As you see every week that we bring someone in, BJ's just simply tapping into her friendship pool. So Jennifer is another one. But I'm really excited for you guys to just listen and hear and learn, glean from what Jennifer's going to share tonight. Jennifer, thank you for giving us your time. And we're going to pass this over to you. I already made you host, so it is all yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, BJ, for having me. Thank you, ladies. It's great to see all of your beautiful faces that are on screen. Tonight, I'm going to talk about, this has been your theme, I understand, Undistracted devotion. Oh, I love that theme. And focusing on spiritual and emotional wellness. So what I'd like to do is start off with a breath prayer. And I'm going to share my screen so we could see the scripture. And you can, feel free to turn off your camera because we're going to just take a moment to have a prayer with Psalm 46, verse 10. I'm going to make that smaller. Let's get in a comfortable position with our feet flat on the floor and are sitting straight up. Okay, don't fall asleep. Sit straight up. Take a deep breath in. Hold and out. Let's take a moment to silence the noise, quiet the noise, center on God, make space for the Spirit. As you read Psalm 46 through breath prayer, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Breathe in calm. Hold. Breathe out tension. Be still and know that I am. Breathe in peace. Hold. Breathe out worry. Be still and know. Breathe in life. Hold. Breathe out stress. Be still. Breathe in God's love. Breathe out anxiety. Be. Breathe in calm. Hold. Breathe out tension. Let's take one more deep breath in and out. and out. As you come back together, one more time. Breathe in, hold, and out. All right, let's come back together. All right, ladies, I have this PowerPoint that I'm going to be reading from. And then go ahead and move forward here. Spiritual and emotional wellness. Okay, so we are far more than spiritual beings. We are made in God's image. We are both whole and multifaceted. That includes physical, emotional, social, and intellectual dimensions as well. There's an unbiblical view that regards emotions, especially sadness, fear, and anger, not just as less than spiritual, but as opposed to the spirit. It's considered a virtue to shut out or suppress our emotions, denying anger, ignoring pain, skipping over depressed feelings, running from loneliness, avoiding doubts, denying sexuality has become an acceptable way of working out our spiritual lives. Many of us feel emotionally numb or have little to no awareness of our feelings. We rarely take time to slow down and listen to our feelings, realizing that God might be speaking to us through them. We can miss the opportunity of the rich dimension that opens us up in a relationship with Jesus when we embrace emotions as an essential aspect of our humanity. Cry of the Soul by Dan Allender. Ignoring our emotions is turning our back on reality. Listening to our emotions ushers us into reality. And reality is where we meet God. Emotions are the language of the soul. They are the cry that gives the heart a voice. However, we often turn a deaf ear through emotional denial, distortion, or disengagement. In neglecting our intense emotions, we are false to ourselves and lose a wonderful opportunity to know God. Jesus freely expressed his emotions. He shed tears in Luke 19:41. He grieved in Mark 14:34. He was angry in Mark 3:5. He felt compassion in Luke 7:13. And he showed astonishment and wonder in Luke 7, verse 9. We emphasize doing for God over being with God. In our hurried busyness, responsibilities, and efforts to serve God, we end up skimping on our relationship with God. We end our days feeling exhausted from trying to meet endless needs. Our free time is filled with more demands in an already overburdened life. There's no time to invest in a relationship with God to simply enjoy being with Jesus. The privilege of serving or leading others becomes a burden. We become irritable, resentful, feeling stuck in a bad situation and disconnected from God. We're going to look at Luke 10 and verse 38 to 42, and this is about Martha and Mary. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So Martha versus Mary, right? Mary prioritized being with Jesus, whereas Martha was touchy, irritable, and anxious. Mary slowed down to focus and center her life on Jesus. Martha was actively serving Jesus, and doing a lot for him was emphasized. The message to serve trumped the message to slow down for time with God. When we disciple, influence, or lead others, we give away who we are in God. We give who we are on the inside. We give our presence. We give our journey with Jesus. We can only give away what we possess. Okay, so that's the difference between Martha and Mary. Mary was touchy, irritable, and anxious, and Mary slowed down to focus and center her life on Jesus. Work for God that is not nourished by deep interior life with God will eventually deteriorate, and us with it. Over time, our sense of worth and validation gradually shifts from a grounding in God's love to the success or failure of our ministry or secular work and performance. And that's when the peace, the clarity, and the spaciousness of our life with Christ slowly, almost imperceptibly disappears. I know my doing exceeds my being when I can't shake the pressure I feel, having too much to do in too little time. I am ignoring the stress, anxiety, and tightness of my body. I'm concerned with what others think. I am often fearful about the future. I am always rushing. I am defensive and easily offended. I am preoccupied and distracted. I fire off quick opinions and judgments. I feel unenthusiastic or threatened by the success of others. I spend more time talking than listening. Can we relate? I'm sure we can, right? Doing and doing. We don't know where we're at. We don't know what we feel. We don't even know how we're doing. We just feel tired or stuck or numb. We have a tendency to keep going, to keep doing what we know is the right thing to do. We have a tendency to pretend to be someone on the outside that we are not on the inside. That is a false self. That's, that saying, fake it till we make it, right? And scripture challenges us to shed the old self or the false self in order to live authentically in our new self or true self in Ephesians 4:22 and 24. But how do we integrate a being with Jesus and a doing for him in such a way that our spiritual lives are characterized by fullness, courage, and peace, not emptiness, discouragement, and anxiety? How do we do that? So there's 3 ways to be with God before doing for God. Number 1, we got to make a radical decision. Number 2, feel your feelings. And number 3, commune with Jesus throughout the day. Make a radical decision. Excuse me. Requires making a clean and total break from our present habits and rhythms. It's a radical decision to end our addiction, not to drugs or alcohol, but to task and doing. We must flee from a life of overcommitment and hurry in order to learn how to be before we do. Spiritual practices like a weekly Sabbath, silence and solitude, prayer, Bible reading, journaling, etc. Number 2, feel your feelings. Traditionally, our focus has been upward and outward to grow our church, reach people for Christ, and that's not bad. But if that's all we do, we miss opportunity to mature emotionally and spiritually. We're trained to believe it is more godly to suppress our feelings, to deny ourselves, and set our minds on things above. The problem is whatever's under the surface comes out in other ways, like anger, explosions, burnout, illness, depression, anxiety, headaches, digestive issues, hives, okay, you name it, neck aches. Okay, these are things that if we suppress our feelings, it comes out in our body. Evagrius of Pontus, another desert father, summarized it best. You want to know God? First, know yourself. In other words, the pathway to God is inevitably passes through self-knowledge. And examples of this is Job ranting before God when he had all those losses in his life, Jeremiah's depression, Moses' anguish in the wilderness, and David's raw emotions with unashamed freedom. Feel your feelings. When we are not in touch with what is going on inside us, we are not in reality, but in illusion or denial. And when we are not in reality, we are not in spirituality, because the authentic spiritual life is not an escape from reality, but an absolute commitment to it. Sadly, our failure to recognize what is going on in our interior worlds causes us to miss many gifts from God. We kind of go on autopilot. We're not open to God speaking through feelings such as sadness, depression, anger, or an unhappy spouse, or a life that periodically spins out of control. This slowing down to feel is essential if we are to be before we do. It requires that we decide what practices, like journaling, for example, might help us come alive to our feelings, and then integrate those feelings into our discernment of God's will. So here's an emotions wheel. I know some of you might not know this, but I am a licensed therapist. Growing up in an Asian family, we didn't talk about our feelings. This was not something that I learned. And, you know, asking myself what I feel, I often did not know. So my training in therapy has helped me to see these wide ranges of feelings, right? You have the middle, which are the main ones: sadness, mad, scared, joyful, powerful, and peaceful. And it extends out to more descriptive, deeper adjectives. Okay, so it's good to do emotional exercises to get in touch, check in with yourself, okay? Because we are not robots. We're made in God's image, and God had emotions, and so do we. So check in with yourself on a daily basis, okay? This is your spiritual and emotional health that goes hand in hand. Because of what ultimately happens, right, if we're not in touch with our emotions, we can be a 22-year-old Christian. This is from Emotional Healthy Spirituality. We can be 22-year-old as a Christian spiritually, but a 1-year-old Christian 22 times. Okay, so we're not growing emotionally because we're suppressing our emotions. And God wants to heal us on a deeper level. Okay, we all became disciples, we're saved, but healing is a continual process. It's a lifelong process. God wants to continue to peel off the layers like an onion, okay? There's layers underneath there. Maybe there's generational trauma, maybe there's abuse, maybe there's all kinds of stuff that's happened in our lives, and God wants to heal it on a deeper level throughout our lives. And number 3, commune with Jesus throughout the day. A person who prays always has a continual and easy familiarity with God's presence at all times, while working, playing, cooking, leading a meeting, driving, visiting friends, as well as during worship, prayer, and Bible study. In other words, the goal is to be continually conscious of God, remembering Him, abiding in Him, all through every waking hour. It's common to compartmentalize our lives, separating the secular from the sacred. The goal of our Christian lives is to abide in Jesus all day, remaining in communion with Him in everything. When you become aware that you have moved from a centered place in God, stop, take a few deep breaths, and retreat for a bit of silence, if possible, to get back on track. So, undistracted devotion. Okay, how do we get there? 3 ways to be with God before doing for God. So make that radical decision, feel your feelings, we're not robots, and commune with Jesus throughout the day. So that is my presentation for today. So I wonder what came up for you. Maybe it's your first time looking at an emotional wheel. What's come up for you? This comes from, we're studying emotionally healthy discipleship. I'm doing this course right now with the ministry staff and the church, and we're doing it as a whole church starting in April. So that's where a lot of this material is coming from. So I wonder what's come up for you, or do you have any questions?
Awesome. Ariana, I will hand that over to you to take it.
Yeah, I'm grateful I get to start because I am going to get emotional. This is really refreshing for me, just to hear. Yeah, a little bit about me, because I don't know you at all, even though you're Jennifer Lopez. I grew up in the church, and so this message has been part of like my whole life. That emotions are just secondary. And if they're not in line with what I'm supposed to be doing, then I have to figure out a way to overcome them and to still do the right thing. And that's all well and good. And there's there's truth to some of that, but I think it's just hard. Knowing that something is missing, something is wrong. There's something wrong with that. But not having the support or the knowledge or the scriptures to back it up, it's really difficult. So anyways, yeah, sorry y'all for starting us off by like weeping. But yeah, this hit a note for me. And I'm so grateful just for you sharing all of this. And honestly, I think my first question was the first thing I thought was, how did this knowledge, how did this I guess for lack of a better term, conviction. How did you come to this space? I think like knowing that you're a licensed therapist, I think answers some questions for me, but for you, like, and knowing kind of the culture that had been in our church for a long time, that it would seem is maybe making a shift. Like how did you get here? How did you have the strength to get here even?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. First of all, Ariana, thank you so much for sharing. And, you know, when we first did this class 2 years ago during the pandemic in 2020, we did emotionally healthy spirituality. This is where it started. And it's just been so life-giving and transforming. Just the thought of Sabbath, all the women were like, we can take a break. You know what I mean? Really? Oh, wow. And just, all these concepts. It's like, these are biblical things. This is the biblical framework and biblical pathways. And it was just timely during the pandemic. And now Peter Scazzaro has come up with his latest book, Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. And that's what we're doing now. And I'll tell you what, we're going through a very difficult time in our church right now. And it has just been so helpful to be able to process together. You know, one of the titles is, okay, be before you do, is what I just did with you tonight. I did a very, very small part of it. That's the first chapter. And there's one on embrace God's gift of limits. And there's one on discover the treasures buried in grief and loss. And we spent 2 weeks on that. And we're just crying away, you know, all the losses, because, you know, our culture is such that we hurry through it. We don't take the time to grieve our losses. And people don't know what to do with tears. It's uncomfortable, you know, we want to change the subject, or, you know, or clap and kind of throw it off so you don't go deeper because it's uncomfortable. And, you know, we're just allowing ourselves to feel. Our emotions are the language of the soul. And it's just like, wow, it's so refreshing, so refreshing. So I hear you. I've been in the church for 31 years, and it wasn't part of my training in the ministry to be able to how to handle emotions. It was more like, we're soldiers. Do you know what I mean? We're a hard fighting soldier. And we did really well with that, you know, with helping people and focused on the mission and all those good things that came from it. But God is just opening up another pathway, another, you know, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But something more that's a deeper healing. And those of us that have been around a long time, we just kind of burned out and tired of just the same, okay, the mission. Yes, absolutely. But there's something more that God is allowing us to discover. So I hope that answers your question, Ariana.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very grateful for everything you shared.
You're welcome.
My other question was if you could share the slides.
Absolutely, sure.
Because I'm like furiously writing notes. I'm like, I can't.
I'll put it in a PDF and send it to BJ. And
that would be amazing. And thank you for referencing that book as well. I will find it and read it because I think it would be amazing. But yeah, I think, does anyone else have any thoughts, questions, any, like Jennifer said, anything that struck a chord with you that you want to share about? You can either like raise your hand in the screen and like wave it. Okay, I see Linda. Yes. Okay, great. I got your name right.
This is actually really timely because I've been reading that book on emotionally healthy discipleship. I came from a church before this one, and where it was the opposite. Not the opposite. I guess being in this church changed my life, not only in a great way, but because I learned so much more about how my faith needs to be deeper, as far as really just having regular times with God, really learning the scriptures on a deep level, on a regular basis. It makes you become very legalistic. And with that, you become, your emotions are not something you need to be spending time entertaining, feeling, because they just get in the way of the doing. And that's a lot of what we've become. It's not about our individual relationship with Christ, which is where it needs to be built on. It becomes about what we're doing and being the person that I am. Our faith became so much more what performance, and getting out of that after, for me, 22 years, it's a tough thing. You start to feel like, what is wrong with me? Because I'm not doing this right. So you're just beating yourself up and beating yourself up and beating yourself up. And then in that, this is not right. It doesn't, it's not right in your heart. So actually what I did is I've been journaling, and journaling actually is the thing that actually gets me out of myself. When I don't journal, I tend to go back into my little hidey hole. But that is actually really saving me, because that's the option. That's the thing that helps me feel my feelings. So I just thank you so much for sharing that, because that right there is therapy. It's the best therapy I've ever had. So I appreciate just what you're sharing here. This is all just wonderful. Anyway, I totally get it. This is like me to a T. I am Martha. I am Martha.
Thank you for sharing, Linda. Yes, journaling is therapeutic. It is a therapeutic tool. And it just helps us to get in touch with what we're really feeling. And because we can go crazy in our heads. I mean, literally, we could, right? People do. And when you journal, it just helps you to go, okay, I'm not, in this world that's kind of out there. This is actually happening to me. This is how I'm feeling, right? And it just helps you to just have a grip on it. And because in our minds, it can be exaggerated. We can go crazy places, but putting it on paper, and I do it in a form is that I go, dear God, I write a letter to God. So I'm actually speaking to God, and it just helps me to get grounded. Okay, I'm speaking, but I'm writing this to God. So it just helps me. So thank you, Linda, for sharing.
I feel like this is something that I battle with constantly. Like, I've done a lot of work in the past few years because, like Ariana, I was raised in the church, and I was literally raised to not cry. Like, tell you how many times I had it drilled into my head not to cry, to toughen up and move on. And it became to the point where, like, I thought that was like a badge of honor to not cry about stuff. And it really it trained me to ignore my emotions to the point that, like, kind of like you were saying, being 22 years old as a Christian, but 1 year old emotionally, because I didn't learn how to deal with my emotions, to work through them in a mature way, to learn how to communicate emotionally. And so, like, now, like in my marriage is one example, like I'm having to relearn how to talk about things without being super immature and bitter and resentful about stuff, because I didn't figure out how to communicate it right. And so I just really appreciate you pointing out how we have to prioritize being first over doing, because even though it's not something we talk about, like, it is such an implied thing, I know, especially for like moms and women, that we just constantly feel this pressure to do. And I just wanted to share this song that actually is just funny, that I was listening to it this morning, and it, like, over and over again, because it's just so good. It's by I think she's called Doe. It's either Doe or DOE.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm trying to think of the name of the song, but the song is all about shedding performance. And it's such a good song. I would encourage all of you to go listen to it. I'm not 100% sure what the title of it is, but if you look up DOE shedding performance, I'm sure it'll bring it up. But thank you so much for this. I feel like I need this hanging on my wall every day.
Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just thank you for everything, like everyone else said. I think it hit me in a way of I have a lot of personal family and people around me that are needing a lot of help right now. And so having practicals like this is very helpful when I typically am a person that people come to for a lot of advice and refuge, which I'm very grateful for and I like. And my grandmother is a therapist, so I've always had her in my life. And so I never recognized what her influence did as far as regulating emotions and things like that. And so when I got married to my husband, who had never had anything of that influence in his life, it was really shocking to me how people can think sometimes. And also, I didn't grow up in the church. So I came into the church already with some thoughts about how to go through, emotions. And so I had a different experience than many people that have been in the church for a long time. And so I would feel like things were a little off. And I would tell my husband, like, I think this is, and I felt weird. I was like, wait, am I off? Because, a lot of people are thinking similarly. And so, but I'm still not a therapist and I don't know how to communicate what I've been taught, if that makes sense. And so now through therapy for both of us, I try to ask the therapist, like, how do I communicate like this, what I feel like I've understood? And so what you shared today are some really great practicals. And my husband and I are reading that book at the moment. And we've read several books on this topic as we both deal with mental health struggles with anxiety. And one thing that I think was really helpful was on the emotions wheel page. It says that we're not robots, we're made in God's image, and that he has emotions. I think that is a big point that I would want to share with people from now on, like to think about, because God does have a range of emotions that we see in the Bible. And if we are in his image, how, there's not shame for it, or there's not guilt for having certain feelings or emotions. And how typically when I talk with people, the relatability is when you start seeing people be vulnerable and start to heal. So I feel like if you can relate to God, someone that's very unreachable in many people's minds, even in my mind sometimes, just the distance, to me, it grounded him and made him more like, made the image more a connection for me visually. So I appreciate that nugget. That was something I had not really thought about before. In the emotions wheel I hadn't seen for several years. So it was a good reminder that it's all connected in different parts. Thanks for sharing and giving practicals, because I think that's the hardest part. When you don't have any beginning or starting point, you don't know what to do with your emotion. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Gianna. It's interesting because let me put this back on gallery. Sometimes, so I grew up, I was known as the crybaby in my family, very highly sensitive. And then I became a Christian, and that was looked down upon, right? I was told to toughen up too. It was like, get over it, Jennifer, right? And I did need that, actually, because I was a crybaby. But now that I'm older, been in the church quite some time, and with my training now, and before I did EHS, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, a few years ago, I was crying when I was doing one of my lessons for midweek, and one of the sisters said, "Wow, you seem really depressed," right? And I went, "Oh, I don't want to seem depressed." Do you know what I mean? And I started to get insecure, and okay, I shouldn't be crying, right? Because I'm the leader and people look at me, I have to be strong all the time, but now what I'm teaching now is that, you know, we don't judge each other's journey, you know. And actually, I was sharing with BJ that I did part of the lesson on Sunday, and I talked about how, you know, I'm a recovering judgeaholic. And that's in the book, Emotionally Healthy Discipleship, and how we judge each other's journey and we compare and we go, what is wrong with her? Or why is she so angry? And why is she so emotional? And why is she so faithless or whatever, you know? And I just said, you know, I'm crying. A lot of you wonder, why has Jennifer been crying a lot? I've been crying a lot as I teach my class. And some of the women don't want to ask me, but I hear from the grapevine, is Jennifer okay? You know what I mean? And I go, I'm very okay. I'm actually very okay. God is just doing surgery on my heart, and you know, grieving a lot of losses and pain, and it's okay. This is good. Don't be afraid of tears. This is actually very, very healthy. And so, and you're gonna process differently. We're all unique. We're unrepeatable. You know, each of us. And that's okay, you know, and God is healing me on a deeper level. So it was good for me to share that on stage. And I was like, I'm okay, guys. Crying is good. Crying is healthy. I'm just getting it all out. So recovering judgeaholics. And now I'm hearing that all over the church. I'm like, I'm a recovering judgeaholic too. I'm one of those. So anyway.
Actually, that's one thing I found out too, going through this, is that we learn to judge people, and we can't judge each other's walk and fit each other in a box. We all are so different. We all come from different places, and what we've been through has all been so different. I mean, what Carolyn's gone through is different than what I've gone through. Because I mean, you know, her upbringing's different than mine, but even before that, I bring my own baggage with me. Before I even became a Christian, I like family issues. So having that compassion and holding back on that judgment and just loving people for who they are, where they are, and not just, and being able to even share your own journey with people to understand that we, you know what, I understand, or maybe I don't get it, but I want to get it. But, you know, I'm there with you. Just, you know, we're all in the same battle. So I don't know.
That's powerful to share, Linda, but I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Right. We may not know exactly how the other person's feeling because we haven't gone through it, but I'm here, and I seek to understand.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So thank you for sharing that. I know Rona from the Philippines many, many, many years ago.
What?
She was converted in our ministry.
Hi, Jen. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was baptized in Jen's ministry many years ago in Manila. So good to see you, Jen.
Good to see you too.
It's so, I'm so pleased. I'm so happy to be reminded about your lesson on emotionally healthy spirituality. If you remember, I was there in that class.
Oh, that's right. You were there.
So I was privileged to be part of that class, and I was reminded once again of my constant battles, constant struggles with being with God, as opposed to, I mean, doing for God as opposed to being with God. It's a daily battle. It's a constant struggle. I know I love Jesus and I really want to serve him, but I always struggle with weariness, with fatigue, with feelings of inadequacy. Just like, you know, a few of our sisters here, I'm also Martha. I want to be a Mary, doing the better part, as Jesus has, you know, talked about Mary. But again, you know, that life of intimacy with God has always been like a far-fetched goal for me. So thanks for this lesson, because it reminds me of, you know, things that I need to work on, and those practicals I know have been, you know, at the back burner of my mind. So now that it's in the forefront again, it's something that I really need to pray about and wrestle about. And I think I gotta revisit that book also. It was a great help to me. And again, thank you for being here with us, with our church.
Thank you, Rona. Thank you. I do want to encourage everyone that, you know, God loves us exactly where we are, accepts us where we are, right? Because we're pretty hard on ourselves as Christians, right? We expect ourselves to be like, you should be here, right? We tell ourselves that, or we tell each other that. Maybe we don't say it out loud, but we have expectations, whether it's with our spouse, our children, or, you know, we're judging, right? Behind that, we don't even realize it. And it's just such a relief and a freedom just to go, okay, it's going to be okay. God loves me where I am right now. I'm accepted. And it's not about what I'm going to do for God. It's just being with him, not to get anything from him, but just to be with him, right? And because we're really good at doing for others and serving and the mission. We're like, that is our strength, right? That is our strength, you know, but where we need to grow in is the being with Jesus, you know, feeling God's love. And that's why I started off with a breath prayer, because it's just slowing down, getting centered, you know, quieting the noise in our brains, and feeling our bodies just tone down, because it's always racing. It's always going and going, right? So this is what we need to grow in. And I believe this is what God is bringing to our churches. So we have this in common, right? So I'm very thankful to be able to share it with you guys. Thank you for being open to this new, you know, many of you already have been on this journey already. So thank you.
Of course. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? Any questions or thoughts?
I always try not to talk too much, but I was just adding one little thing that you had mentioned, because I've been saying it for the past like 4 days to people. And it's like, you're talking about being, and just the emphasis on, instead of living for God or for our spouse or for whatever that for is, but living with God. And so like, that's always like at the forefront of my brain, is like, I want to live with Jesus. I don't want to live for Jesus. And, you know, a lot of what I'm seeing now, or even when I'm off, I'm like, oh, I've been doing for my husband, or doing, instead of like with my husband, or doing for God. And that's why I'm resentful right now, or I don't want to give, and I don't want to be with people. And so just this idea of being with God, and the whole idea of with, is just a really beautiful thing to me, instead of for, just keeping that at the forefront of my brain. So just adding to your thought already.
Thank you for sharing that. They call you G. Thank you for sharing that, G.
No, I love that feedback too. I think it's very easy it's a lot harder to like sit and be still and just be than it is to go and do. And I definitely think that like our society values like action more than like anything else. So for sure, I appreciate the point on being with God versus doing for God, or doing for God out of this place of being with God. And I really appreciate you bringing it up too, Gianna, because I think that's like so crucial. It looks like, before I call anyone else, it looks like Carolyn has found the song and shared it in the chat. So thank you, Carolyn. I assume that's what that video is. Cool. Does anyone else
I do want to add, Ariana, is that, you know, our being with God, you know, when we're being with God, it produces in us whatever we do for him, right? Being before doing. It comes from a place of not of we have to, right? Or not that we're expected to, or it's a burden, okay? Being with God first, whatever we do comes from a place of love, comes from a place of joy, comes from a place of peace, right? So when we're doing stuff for God or serving or whatever we do, serving our families, making dinner, and we're stressed out, okay, so our being doesn't match our doing, right? That's how you know. It's like, okay, I'm out of balance. I need to step back and breathe. Maybe you could do the breath prayer, right? Whatever I found that I could stop wherever I am. I can breathe when I'm in the car. I can breathe anytime, just to slow it down, because my mind just goes ahead of myself, and I'm getting anxious about what I got to do. So to be able to practice that breath prayer, slow your body down and center yourselves again, has just been so helpful for me personally. So just to add that.
But I do have a comment. Years ago, I was helping a sister to bury one of her parents, and she's a really good friend of mine. So I thought that if I handled everything and did everything, that she would realize that I was really being her friend. And at the end of it all, what she said was, I love the fact that you were doing, but I think you forgot to be. Mm. And it was such a shock. It just blew me away. I was like, what do you mean? I was being your friend by doing all. And she's like, no, I just needed you to be my friend. I didn't care if you didn't do anything. I needed someone just to be my friend rather than to do all the things you were doing. Mm. And it was such an awakening of, okay, what am I doing wrong here, God? And then as I'm going through this memorial of losing my sister, I realized that the best thing to do was to be with God rather than to try and do anything, go anywhere, to just be with God and let God comfort me through this. And it's an I get to rather than I have to. And when it's an I get to, it's a whole different perspective than I have to.
Wow. So thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. Thank you, Margie. Mm-hmm.
My name's Ashley. I loved your lesson, Jennifer. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I think so. I kind of had a similar just thought process and like breakthrough for myself when I was in college and I read the book Captivating. And it's all about just like embracing as women who God made us to be. And it was kind of like freeing, like we're made to be sensitive and we're made to feel a lot and, all these things. And, I think just a thought that I wanted to share that reminds me of what you were talking about was that a lot of the time I felt like I was too sensitive and that maybe my emotions were too much for other people. And I think what was so freeing for me was the realization that even if it's too much for other people, it's never too much for God. That I could fully be myself. I could fully, like cry crazy and, be screaming or whatever, like David in the Psalms, like I could be like that. And that was exactly what God wanted me to be, that it's never too much for him to handle. And he can fully handle and accept all of me and even those really emotional parts of me. So thank you for this reminder. It's so healing to know that this is being talked about, and thank you for just freeing us up as women to really feel and express how we feel in our relationships with God and each other. So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. I love that book.
Me too.
I was just going to share something that I was thinking about. I know Christy posted, she's got a Facebook group that she's been sharing about, and today she was talking about comparison. And I've really been working on being more aware of when I get anxious. And I've realized that a lot of times it's when, not intentionally, but kind of like subconsciously, I've compared my results with either like what other people's expectations are or what unrealistic expectations I put on myself. So just, I think it helps me a lot to just like you said, when you're feeling anxious or worked up about things, to take a step back and allow yourself to be aware of what expectation you're putting on yourself that's causing that anxiety, and is that something you should even be like, get that out of your head. Like for me, a lot of times it has to do with my kids and what's really important in our, you know, day-to-day activities. So that's helped me a lot to just kind of measure, like, what am I comparing to, or expectations am I trying to hold up myself up to?
Thank you for sharing that, Carolyn. You know, there's a part in the book that talks about that Jesus knew he had his identity in God was so strong that, you know, because he was constantly being pulled everywhere, right? People wanted him to heal and all these things, but he was so in touch with God and being with God that he didn't give in to the pressure. You know, his family wanted this and that from him and calling him out of his mind, and, you know, but he was so solid, and he just spent that time with God early in the morning. He was grounded. And a lot of times that's just what we need. We need to be grounded, because we do get pulled everywhere as women, and we're so sensitive. We're nurturing, right? And especially when it comes to our kids, sometimes we're not sure, should we be doing that or this, or we feel guilty, we're not doing enough, or something like that. Satan gets in our brain. So that being with God, to be grounded, is so important. And you just, you know, of course, input from, you know, women that have gone before you to help maybe give some input. But that grounding is super helpful in helping you not to give into any anxious thoughts or comparing. But thank you for being open about that.
So thank you. I love the idea of this, and it sounds so safe. And like somebody who said, you know, we grew up in the church, and I grew up in a military household, and then as a teenager became a Christian in a very strict church. And but I like the idea. It just sounds safe. And it's not a totally new concept, but I appreciate this take on it. And I look forward to the slides and the book. So I guess that's all I wanted to say, is I think that's what I got most out of it. And I was talking to some friends earlier, and we were talking about everybody needs outside help. And I'm like, I feel like sometimes outside help can just be a like-minded Christian, or, you know, somebody else in recovery or whatever. And just to, that, I don't know, it's okay. So thank you is all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Safety is huge, right? Safety is huge. And if we can be a part of create a community by being a safe person, meaning we're recovering judgeaholics, right? And we're working on our inner self, you know, and the more we do that, and the more empathetic we'll be toward one another, you know, when we're real and we're honest and we're doing the work and we're sharing with each other the things that we're learning without shame, without judgment, without comparing, but we're just on this journey alongside one another, you know, cheering each other on and seeking to understand. And we need that. Gosh, where else can we go? I mean, I one of the things I said was, you know, in church, disciples don't come when they're not doing well, because they just can't come and be happy. Do you know what I mean? And have a smile on their face because they're struggling. And so they don't come, and they want to struggle in isolation or struggle at home because they're embarrassed that, you know, they can't smile, and everybody at church is always happy. And so I just talked about, you know, let's make this a safe place where people can come, especially when they're struggling, especially when they're going through a hard time. You know, not this what's wrong with you? What happened to you? But you know what I'm saying? But hey, I'm here for you. I don't know what's going on, but you know, I'm here just to listen, right? Something like that. That safety is huge. So Elizabeth, thank you for bringing that up. Mm-hmm.
All right, Jennifer, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So if you guys have something to say, scream at me. Again, I can't see you. But Jennifer, thank you. This is really awesome. I mean, listen, guys, how often do we get a chance to have a licensed therapist sitting before us and answering questions and speaking to our hearts? So this has really been awesome. You know, we're all coming out of the same mess, just in different shades, you know, and as we hear everyone share just the fears and the different stuff we've come out of, the beautiful thing is that God has given us the opportunity to press the reset button and rebuild our church. You know, so we get a chance, as we've been studying here, to now walk with God out of devotion, not out of commitment. That's where we're going to start all over again. So the past doesn't have to have the hold on us that it has had on us. So we're choosing to walk in freedom now. You know, it's shaking off all of this crazy that we've been carrying around and walking in that freedom. And Jennifer, that's really what we're hearing. So thank you for just bringing in that breath of fresh air. You know, I love the fact that we have the ability, just as Jennifer showed us in the very beginning, to just stop, breathe, and reset. We don't need anyone else to give us permission to do it. We don't need somebody to say, let's stop and pray. In the heat of the moment, we can stop, breathe, and reset ourselves. So that, I think, is my takeaway. And I really pray, guys, that we've had some incredible tools come our way this month. So we've got a lot in our toolkit. Now we need to actually take it out and use it. You know, the difference between a tool and an instrument. A tool is there really just to serve to make something easier for you. An instrument takes it and it turns it so that it becomes something that produces. So we want to take all of these tools that have come our way this month, use them so that they actually become instruments in our hands, so they can produce that freedom in Christ that I think we're all looking for. So Jennifer, again, thank you. This has been
You're welcome.
Everybody, I know we're all muted, but this is a round of applause.
Thank you so much. It's good to be with you all.
This is great. Thank you so much for your ministry. Thank them for setting the example. Thank them for allowing us to steal you for the night. And we will give you back my love to your husband, your children, and you have always been a joy to me. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, BJ. I feel the same way about you. All right. Love you guys. This is ASL. I love you. And ASL.
Awesome. We love you. Okay. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.